Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Red for Anfield Index. It is Saturday, the 4th of October, and I don't know why, this may just be absolutely wild, but I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm looking forward to watching Liverpool play, which again may seem madness after what's happened this week, but I've just got a sneaker that it is going to be a good weekend. The bubble may well and truly be burst in about 6 or 7 hours' time. We will have to see. I'm your host, Dave Davis, coming to you from, it's just October, isn't it? The wind is howling, and I mean howling. Stuff has been blowing across like deck chairs and everything in Edinburgh. Fingers crossed it is not as bad wherever you are, ladies and gents. But let's get into it because it is a massive game. And as Stuart says there, Liverpool need to win tonight. It's that simple, isn't it, really? This result will define so much. It really will. I know everyone's going to jump in and say, love a great performance, love to see things knit together. Of course we would. That goes without saying. But 5:30 at Stamford Bridge, a win. A win is massive in the sense of it just kind of takes things down a notch or two for some, doesn't it? It just goes, right, we're back. We won a tough game. We've got through a tough period with difficult away fixtures as well. And you go into the international break going, okay, breathe. A draw, and you kind of like, okay, well, we stop that, but we didn't win any of the last three. Yeah, we'd be level on points because there's no Arsenal are going to absolutely do over West Ham at 3:00 today. A defeat, Christ, I just stay off social media completely during the international break. But I am actually quite confident about this one. Maybe again, touch wood, that is an insane madness. But I don't apologise for bringing this up at all either. When you look at that Premier League table, as the saying goes, here we sit with all our problems at the top of the league. Fingers crossed by the time we're looking at it later again tonight, things are relatively the same. And we're still waiting for, team news, things that will come up. I'm sure we'll get photos of the boys strolling around London, etc. We know Alisson isn't with them. We know that forward-wise, Chiesa and Hugo Ekitike trained yesterday as well, didn't they? Which is absolutely brilliant news. Said it on a few shows, so I'm not going to sort of change anything. Arne Slot's not going to do what I would want him to do. I think Arne Slot will do this. I think he'll play Marmadashvili in goal. I think it'll be Virgil and Ibu at the back, Kirkez, and I do think he will go with Conor Bradley at right back. I think in the middle, you'll see Szoboszlai, McAllister and Gravenberch. I think he's going to go Gakpo on the left. I think he's going to play Isak and Salah. I've just got a feeling that he will relegate Florian Wirtz to the bench for this, which, just to be clear, is not what I would do. I would have Wirtz on the left for this. But there's a few arguments, isn't there? People want, and I understand Robbo in, that if we're not going to let Milos Kerkez be Milos Kerkez, maybe a left back that can pass it a bit better comes into the mix. Ibu's been stinking the last few games. Impossible to argue that, really. So Joe Gomez gets a shot, and I could understand that as well. This is the one I'm swithering over, to be honest. I don't want to drop Ekitike. He's been the form forward, but I just wonder how much that cramp and everything, has affected him. If it hasn't affected him at all, I wouldn't rob him of a start, personally. Lot of decisions, but either way, being positive about it, people. There are proper, serious options from the bench for this one later today. Massive weekend, though, innit? Absolutely massive. To official business, as we always talk about in the Daily Red. Interview-wise, Ryan Gravenberch will do everything to win. But now I certainly hope so, Ryan. It's an interesting interview where he talks about, I think we analysed it good, and now Chelsea is waiting for us. So he will prepare for Chelsea and try to do everything to win the game. Of course, losing twice is not nice, but what I said was do everything to go for the win on Saturday, prepare well, and give everything. That's the only thing that you can do. And they've had the same amount of rest as Chelsea, wasn't it? We both played on Tuesday night. Yes, we went to Istanbul. They were at home, but there isn't really any excuses for this one whatsoever. We expect them to do everything to win. But there are a few interesting bits, I would say, in that article. So well worth the read if you do get a bit of time. If you do get a bit of time, and you can pick on this because you can watch, read. This is a cracking interview, people. So it's through BBC Football with Kelly Sommers, Hugo Ekitike. And he literally goes through everything about his personality, his love for football, his forward, his time at Reims, and how that didn't work out when he moved to PSG. So much is covered. Literally, you can see it here. Well worth a watch, well worth a read, depending on what you prefer there. As he said, it's on BBC Sounds and all different places. I've got to say, from reading it and watching it, Hugo Ekitike, he doesn't half come across well, does he? He's had an absolutely brilliant start to life at Liverpool. And with everything else that's been faltering, he's the one forward that's been shining. Even against Galatasaray, until he went off, I thought he showed really well. There's a lot to like about Hugo Ekitike. You can see there's still some raw edges to his game, and probably even against that against Galatasaray, you wanted him to finish there, didn't you? But there's a lot to be impressed about with this kid so far. Well worth a read or a watch there. In terms of other official business, we talked to you about the Hugo Ekitike one. Arne Slot was talking quite a bit, and he was talking quite a bit in regards to the embargo, because there was different bits released last night. Now, this is the best one for me, because he talked about the transfer window and other different things. And there's some great lines in this one. We were very happy winning the league, but we didn't shut our eyes for the second part of the season. How many times we needed a set piece to win, which is not scoring bad, because Arsenal and Chelsea are needing a set piece almost every single game at the moment. That's why we also had the window that we had. Sometimes to replace, sometimes to add a certain quality. And it's up to us that we can do better in these kind of games than we did in the second part of last season and the first part of this season. There's a few things to this. I find it interesting that he's grouped them a little bit, because the end of last season, I mean, we'd already won the league. And I know there was games where it wasn't quite flowing, but we got the job done. But you could see the balance of the team, couldn't you? You could see the system. You could always see what he was trying to do. The management of the game as well. The first part of this season, well, the results have been there. We can't be too critical until recently, I know, before you jump on me for that. But the results have absolutely been there up until the last few games. It's just about getting used to players, isn't it? And, embedding them in. And as he says, in the meantime, we almost won every single game this season. But the margins are not the same as the first part of the last season, with 3-0 against Bournemouth, 6-3 at Tottenham, 5-0 at West Ham. And those were brilliant games that we played. There's no two ways about it. And then you depend a bit more on luck or bad luck or on a set piece. We are trying to go to a situation where we don't need a set piece to win a game, or we don't need someone to fall on the ground to get a penalty or a referee. Of extra time. Yeah, that is something we dislike. And I get that. And I get it's not as free-flowing as those performances. I get it's not quite knitting together ultimately as well. But it's going to take time. And we are going to need to have a little bit of patience. That being said, Arne Slot does need to make some decisions on certain players and how it's going to work quite quickly, because he does talk a little bit in this one as well about, I won't give it you all, but Florian Wirtz and the reason he was bought in. Needs to make a call, doesn't he? Is Florian Wirtz going to, are we just going to have to get used to him as a 10 and adjust with the team? Could he play left? What does that do to the balance of midfield? All those things make a call. Like he's got to make a call on the right back. Does he trust Frimpong and Bradley? Because he talked about in the press conference it being, injuries and that. Well, Szoboszlai's played right back when they have been fit and available. And if he plays right back today, I think he's making quite a big call on that. So well worth a read there. And also, he has to talk a little bit more in this one about set pieces, how things work. So I'm not going to give it you all. Well worth a read if you do get 5 minutes or so on that, ladies and gents. Lot Arne Slot has been talking about. Understandably, there's a lot of questions people want to ask him at the moment. In terms of other news, you have a look here. See, Fabrizio Romano's provide an update on Liverpool. David Ornstein, all the big journos are talking about things that are happening in January and the summer. It's mental, isn't it? It's October already. So there's only like 3 months or so till the January window opens. There's international breaks in that time as well. So things will be in place or starting to move, starting to come out. So let's go through these one by one. What did he say in real? What did Fabrizio Romano say? There's a bit of an update there on Liverpool. May recognise the man in the photo. Dayot Upamecano, French international, Bayern Munich centre-back. This is what he said. He said, Dayot Upamecano is one of the big names out of contract in the summer of 2026. Bayern keep insisting on an extension. They remain in contact with the agents of the player. The agreement to extend his contract was very close around the beginning of April this year, and then they continue to discuss some details. At the moment, they're still working on that. Sounds familiar, that, doesn't it? Being close with the French centre-back, and then more details to be worked out. We'll talk about that shortly. And he goes on a bit about his scenario, but this is probably the key bit that you want. Bayern directors are insisting a lot to keep Upamecano because they really believe in him. But there is interest from English clubs, La Liga, Serie A. So obviously many big clubs are considering this opportunity. However, Bayern still have the ball in their court. They have a proposal on the table and they are talking with the agents of Upamecano. Not for me. Just going to be completely honest. Some people do like the player and will say a French international with his pedigree, his experience, 27 coming into his prime on a free. It's worth having a look at. They'll also quote things like, he is a very good passer. Only a fool would debate that. That is his strength. You can see he's in the 98th percentile for passes attempted, nearly 90 a game, around 1 a minute on average. Pass completion of 93%. Progressive passes, something we're struggling with at the moment as well, in the 94th percentile. So people will look at Dayot Upamecano and say, could he not lean towards this and solve this? Even his aerial rate isn't too bad. He's not a behemoth that we like, for instance, in the terms of, the Konate or a Van Dijk. It's a bit low. There's not many this season at 55%, but a career average of 61. Here's the big problem for me with Dayot Upamecano. Dejan Lovren tendencies. Absolutely galaxy brain at times. Just runs out make silly decisions, make silly mistakes. He's got that just brain fart in his locker at any time. Yes, you could say he's good on the ball. Yes, he's good at passing. Yes, he's progressive. I wouldn't argue with that at all. But we've got a hell of a lot of data, a hell of a lot of evidence where you can see he's at the scene of the crime or Upamecano's making errors. So for me, no. Plus, my gut's still telling me on this that actually it's all just a agent talk to kind of ramp up the fee and what he can get. A bit like Alphonso Davies did when our name came into the mix as well. That's what I honestly think with this one, despite what Fabrizio Romano is saying. David Ornstein, who a lot of you tend to prefer, he was all talking this season. And just I'll go back on that because Helior saying there, not sure what we call Konate's mishaps this season. Well, Helior, yeah, absolutely. Konate, I said quite clearly, has been stinking this season, especially the last few games. But does that mean we get a centre-back that makes errors? Is that what we should do? Come on. I think we know the story with that. But anyway, David Ornstein on this. What did he say? I'll be honest, I tend to give more truck to what he says than anyone else. Although it's not quite what you probably want to hear. This is what he said on NBC Sports in America, sorry. There's been reports Konate has rejected a new contract. I don't think it's so much a rejection, maybe more of a stalemate or a lack of agreement, basically. I'm told talks are active and ongoing, but nothing is close yet. So there was that report, wasn't there, through L'Equipe and, various sites had it that a contract offer had been made a few weeks ago, but essentially a reliable journalist there in David Ornstein saying, no, that's not the case. It was just that talks are ongoing. We're still at a stalemate. This was interesting as well. Suggestions he's on 70 grand per week. I'm told it is more than double that. So he would want a really good contract, deservedly, you could say, go into the bracket of earners, but that's something they really need to sort out. Well, here's the thing. Because there are reports from, Capology, all these sites there. But, and I won't play that, I'll get in trouble, but 70 grand a week, more than double. So call it 140, 150, somewhere like that. So he's wanting to go a bracket clearly above that. So what do you think Ibu's going to be wanting? Over 200k per week, isn't he? If you're honest, of course he would, because we're asking him to commit for, the big contract of his career. I want Ibu to stay. Don't get me wrong. I think he has real qualities. He's not really showing them too well at the moment. There's zero doubt about that. But what would you be prepared to pay Konate? Ask yourself that honest question. David Ornstein's telling you he's on more than double. So call it 150 then. More than double, David Ornstein's words. 150 now. What would you lift Konate to? And at the same time, Real Madrid, PSG, we know these teams are in his ear. And you know what they will give him on a free at the same time as well. I don't know. Honestly, everything at the moment, I think it's just easy to prepare for. It would be a shock if Ibu is still at this club next season. I think you've just got to prepare for that. And people mentioning there about Guehi, saying it's a central defender, was boring as reliable. Guehi fits that description. David Ornstein did also mention Mark Guehi in his chat. As well as talking about Ibu, this was crucial. Liverpool tried for Mark Guehi. It collapsed on deadline day. I expect them to go back in the summer of 2026, but not in January. There'll be competition from Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. That's Paul Joyce saying, who has said they won't go back in January. That's David Ornstein now saying they won't go back in January. You're two big dogs, if you want to call it that, journalist-wise, which adds some weight to that, doesn't it? I'm not saying it will necessarily be Guehi, of course. I'm not going against Ornstein and Joyce, but they're reporting what they hear. That they'll both be aware that things could change, and another injury, completely changes the picture. But I do suspect Liverpool will do a centre half in January. Genuinely, I do think that is what will happen. Guehi may well be one they look at and go, okay, he's a free, but you can't go into the second half of the season with Van Dijk, Konate, and Joe Gomez. I mean, if Joe Gomez doesn't play today, what does that say about how much faith Arne Slot has in him, really? Because Ibu is serving up stinkers at the moment. And if he starts today, and Joe Gomez still hasn't got a game, have we really got three competitive centre halves? And then the injury record, everything you could sort of level on top. So, yeah, all the suggestions are, David Ornstein said it last night, to back up Paul Joyce, no Mark Guehi in January. We'll have to see if there is one. To finish this bit, I've got to be honest, of all the centre halves that we've looked at on Anfield Index, we've previewed, there's quite a few I like the look of, but to Bart's disagreement, it's still Jeremy Jacquet for me. Nearly 20, only just 20, I should say. Looks an absolute beast of a player, strong, used to defend in space. Look at that, 98th percentile for interceptions, 88th for tackles. People will talk about his progression, but I think across the back line and the style and the setup, we need to get better at that. This would still be the guy. Be astonished if we can do this one in January. Have to be honest on that. But he would be it for me. Going to rumble, isn't it? Because Liverpool need, and I get it. There's a few others everyone wants to talk about, and a few mentioned in the chat panel. We're all hoping, let's be honest, this summer for a Crystal Palace 23-24 reunion, aren't we? We hope that Guehi's in the dressing room with Elise and Wharton. Of course we do. That's what we want. A Palace 23-24 reunion at Anfield. But there's a long way to wait until then. We shall see. Although the other thing just to mention, this came out yesterday through Ben Jacobs and TalkSport, that Liverpool are seriously considering a January transfer move. So again, to say it'd be crazy, I would do it. But if it's not going to be Guehi, which seems to be the suggestion, answers on a postcard to Anfield Index, please. We shall see what happens, eh? Other things coming up today. We have got an absolute smorgasbord of content for you. Even we had it out last night and this morning. We did countdown to kick off for you when we did the head-to-heads. We did what the manager was saying. We did all those things for you there. Jack had a gentleman, I can't remember his name, from the Chelsea show, but bit of an opposition preview, so both takes. You'll have even later today, Match Day Live. You'll have the build-up. You'll have the watch-along with Jack all the way through. You'll have the boys, Trev, Dave, and no doubt someone else on post-match Raw. Gags will be there talking afterwards as well. And, of course, Arne Slot talking post-match. So we've got an absolute feast for your eyes there. And even for your ears as well. I mean, look at this. Just in, look at that live, just in the last 24 hours or so. Had Lewis Steele on talking about all the issues and what we needed to solve. You had the Red Room. You had post-conference presser. Gags and Grizz. We say Almighty Blues with the Opposition Fan podcast. Countdown to kickoff last night as well. And today, watch along and Gags. All that, people, in the last 24 hours alone. Jan was talking about Chelsea as well. Alisson injury concerns. And in case you missed that, Arne Slot confirmed it, didn't he? Jeez. Looking like, and David Ornstein also mentioned this, potentially 6 weeks. Although what I should say in the press conference, Arne Slot mentioned nothing certain right now. We'll have to see how the injury heals, but not looking good. It would be great, and I mean great, if Marmadashvili had a good game today, wouldn't it? It's a massive weekend. You can't dress it up any other way. This is a game coming off the back of 2 back-to-back defeats, one in the Premier League against Crystal Palace away, one in the Champions League against Galatasaray away. This is the 3rd away game in a row. Liverpool have got issues, be it at fullback, be it at trying to progress the ball, be it what's the balance in midfield, the attack not functioning, some not fully fit. But there's no excuses now. They have to get a result in this. They really do. An interesting mark saying there, Chelsea will step up for this game at Stamford Bridge. I see a marginal defeat, unfortunately, as bad luck tends to come in threes, so get it out the way now. Maybe this is madness, Mark. Maybe it's madness, everyone. Maybe I'm looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, but I fancy this one. I just look at Chelsea and think they have got a few injuries, and yes, that only leaves them with about 12 fit centre-backs, but a lot of those players, I mean, it looks like, on the team sheet, you suspected it with Badashile, who's back in. He was on the bomb squad, wasn't he? And maybe Hato. Don't know if he drops Caicedo into there. If he does drop Caicedo into there, I wouldn't be sad because that loses them something in midfield as well. Arne Slot has never lost 3 in a row. Hellier as well. Could today just be the day where something magical happens for Isak? Wirtz does something. Salah looks like the old... Whatever it is, no injuries and a win. That is all we can really ask for this one. Anything else? If there is some nice football, that's a bonus, but no injuries and a win. And it just puts a line through these current concerns for now, doesn't it? This international break. It's massive. We won't have that long to wait to find out the team news. We won't have that long to wait to watch the game, will we? Saturday, the 4th of October, 5:30. It is on Sky Sports Live in the UK. Not got a clue overseas. As we said, build up to then, you've got a raft of content, audio, YouTube, if you want to watch that. But I'm excited for this one. Maybe ask me the same about 7 o'clock tonight if I still feel that way. But on Saturday, the 4th of October, a massive weekend. That was another Daily Red, the Anfield Index.